Mm, 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 mm. We are live. What's up, everybody? Glad to see you today. I wanted to tell you some deep information that will probably prevent you from folding on yourself, folding on your dreams, folding on the visions, folding on the goals that God has intentionally placed inside of your heart and inside of your mind. In my book, Building the New, A Year of Living Life on Purpose, on page 159, I explain the three phases that happen during change and transformation, AKA an identity shift. This is a mainstream word that a lot of people are now starting to talk about, which is called cognitive dissonance. And all that means is there's a gap between who you are and who you say you want to be. There's this identity gap. There's this phase where your thoughts, actions, habits, and behaviors are not in alignment with who you're envisioning yourself to be. The life that you want, the relationships that you want, the money that you want, like all those things. And so this becomes this journey and these phases that sometimes people are going to get success like right away, boom, and then other people's you see as a underground overnight success. Some of my favorite people I love listening to is Kevin Hart talks about he was a 16-year overnight success. And unless people are really documenting the journey, they're documenting the process, you just kind of look like they've come out of nowhere and all of a sudden God is just blessing up their business, their lives, and ultimately any relationship that they get into. And I'm going to spill the tea with you here because this is super important to understand so that you have the capacity and a winner's mindset to continue to achieve the life that you're claiming that you want. You're not settling, you're not staying complacent, you're not quitting, you're not compromising. Like you're actually going full force for what you say and what you claim you want versus just sitting on the sidelines, watching everybody else live the life that you're saying that you want, sitting there and complaining. We're not doing that anymore. Okay. Can we make can we make a deal on this one? Agree? Pinky promise. Here we go. Pinky promise here. So there's this phase, right? I like this journey. And what I like to say is like you'll see a lot of people when they're doing presentations, they'll talk about this over the bridge analogy. I don't see life to be as a bridge. I see projects to be over the bridge, like getting something done. For example, maybe cleaning your room and you're dreading the process and you think about what it feels like to live in a clean, organized space. So then it gives you that motivation to go and get that process done. But if we're talking about having a really big vision, we set these target goals, they become a staircase and we set these micro goals to continue. Like goals are almost like a video game. Have you ever played a video game before and you I'm playing this video game and you kept failing at level 1 until you didn't, and then eventually you started to learn the patterns and then you got to level 2. And then when you got to level 2, you same thing, failed a few times, learn the patterns, learn the systems, learn the framework, and then there got to level 3. That's how life operates. There's seasons, there's levels, there's layers to all of this. It comes down to making a decision with an end in mind. Oh, with an end in mind, and from there operating at higher levels. So hopefully this is a lot better. Hopefully you guys can hear me on this side here. Can you hear me? Good. I had to take my thing out. So how this operates is when you're creating this space, it's called this cognitive dissonance is you say you want to be this person with the end in mind, but your thoughts, actions, habits, and behaviors are not matching up to who you say you want to be. There is like this dissonance, this distance, this disconnect. You say you want to be healthy and strong, yet you're not doing the identity work. You're not showing up for your training. You're not eating better. You're not hydrating. You're disrespecting your sleep. Like you're everything that you're saying you want is not matching up. It's completely like unaligned. Now, cognitive consonance is when your thoughts, actions, habits, and behaviors, kind of like a staircase, are in alignment with who you say you want and the life that you say you want to live. And then from there, you allow time to catch up to you as you're in this pursuit of. So you're learning almost like a character, like you are an actor and actress, and you are learning the environments that are going to enrich your soil. You are studying behavioral patterns, you're dressing different, you're speaking different, you're around different friend people. You are developing skill sets that will get you to these higher levels, to these stairs, right? And these staircases that get you to that space. So if you're talking about preventing burnout, that just comes down to learning how to take care of yourself throughout the process, identifying high performance habits, which I talk about in chapter 4 in my book, Building the New, and just establishing those skill sets and learning how to have healthy breaks and timeouts. So, this process of this pursuit of this becoming, AKA your identity shift, so transforming any area of your life. In the book, I talk about that there's 12 subcategories of life. And from there, we create different identities. And remember, there's different levels, there's levels and layers to all of this, there's seasons to everything in life. And it's really about getting clear on what level you want to play at in your business, your life, and your relationships. Do you want to go pro? And do you want to be the MVP player of all these areas of your life? Or do you just want to kind of say that, hey, I lived a life, I did it, I'm here and this and that? Like, no, like if you're here, don't let me tell you what to do, actually. Not no, but like, I will not let you settle for less than your God given full potential. But I understand, like Patrick was saying here, is sometimes life will really knock you out. It will knock the wind out of you, and you won't see the light in the darkness. And sometimes it is a massive endurance game where it's just like hit after hit after hit after hit, and you're just feeling like you're barely crawling. And that's called the identity gap. There's this phase that happens. There's a three-phase system in change and transformation. And you have the identity work, okay? You have the identity shift, and in between the two of climbing the staircase in the pursuit of this life that you say you want, there is a gray zone. And in the gray zone is typically where I see so many talented high performers, high achievers fold. They become almost like they start, stop on different areas of their life, and they never reach their God-given full potential. That's what I'm talking about, this gray zone. So how do you consistently get back up with the hits? How do you consistently show up for things when nobody else is clapping for you, where everybody's questioning you, where you're questioning yourself? Like, how are you and when are you, and are you consistently showing up for those things? I'll tell you right now, in the pursuit of writing this book, this was a long game play. I, in my mind, had set a deadline to write a book in 1 year. I was like, oh, I have so much information, no problem. Well, God had other plans, because as I was going through my own identity shifts in Christ and I became a Christ follower, a lot of what I was doing from the New Age space had shifted. My heart posture shifted. My aspects of my personality had shifted. My friend circle shifted. Like, everything starts to shift in this pursuit of as your own identity shifts. And so as I'm writing the book, I'm like, let me give you this playbook, the playbook for specifically the high achieving brain, the person that wants extraordinary in life as they're in the pursuit of greatness. And and there's these phases that happen, and when I start to tell clients this stuff, and when we start to build an identity shift framework on a micro level, on a day by day of like, okay, well, how do we put this in our schedules? What do our schedules look like when you are in this becoming phase, right? So it becomes a muscle. Like, practice it until you believe it. And sometimes you have to borrow other people's beliefs, or you just consistently show up because you've made a decision. So go ahead and say decision. I've made a decision, meaning I'm going to give myself a 1 year to go all in on this thing that I'm claiming that I want. And that's why if you click the link below, I have a free 12 month accountability tracker to show what happens when you're consistent. So one time I got asked, like, well, how fast is it going to take to get there? Well, everybody has different things and different levels of what they're unlearning, revealing, shifting, changing, depending on the level of resistance, if there's strongholds and things like that. And it just really is the most consistent person wins. The person that doesn't fold, the person that maybe takes breaks, but you get back in the game. And some days you're going to walk, some days you're going to crawl, some days you're going to feel like you're sprinting. But what really matters is that you are showing up every single day, even if you are at a 1% show up. Doesn't always have to be 100%. And here's the thing about creating a schedule based on your identity shift. We're actually doing a time management identity shift schedule. So kind of like with the end in mind, building out your schedule for the person you want to become. That's going to be May 29th through the 31st is it's going to be a workshop. And I want to invite you there. If you want more information, you can just go ahead and comment below time, and I'll be more than happy to give you the link to see if this is something that's a good fit for you. So as you're in this pursuit of these different levels and in this identity shift, which this actually took 4 years to build out for you, and an assignment, we have these visions, we have these goals, but sometimes, especially when you are a believer and you are being obedient to God, they are called assignments. And it's a different mindset because it is a act of obedience when we're showing up for the things that God is calling upon our lives, like a purpose that God is calling upon you. And I was watching a podcast the other day, and they were talking about people change into spaces, which I think is kind of more mainstream talked about. If you haven't heard it, people change in massive pain, but they also change when they're in purpose. And, when you're holding on to these remembrances of the intention and the vision of what is required of you and where you're going, it's like all these invisible steps start to unfold as you take those steps. Clarity comes with the step. And we have to sometimes just look at what is the next clear step. What are the opportunities? How can I be resourceful with what I do have for the people that are in my Rolodex? And take those steps and be resourceful for where you're at and showing up with those spaces. I'm going to give an example. So I'm working with the client right now, and there's a 4-part of phase. There's this identity shift framework I talk about in the book. By the way, the book is linked below, but this is something we're going to be building out your schedule based on this identity shift framework on May 29th. And in this identity shift framework, there's a 4-part process where you're identifying your emotional state, which really just kind of comes down to your nervous system. Is it dysregulated? Is it, I laugh because most high achievers operate and sometimes get addicted to dysfunction, or dysregulation and chaos. And you have grounded, which is your most clear state. And then you have expansive, where you're thinking above and beyond. There's like, no limits, no caps. Like you're just moving, you're sprinting, you're going. And from there, we have feelings that happen in these spaces. From there, we have behaviors or the lack of moving, right? We move a certain way or we don't move at all, because when the nervous system is dysregulated, 4 things happen. You hear me talk about this a lot: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. Fawn is people pleasing. It's compromising aspects of yourself, core values, and your standards in order to please others. So you're not creating chaos for whatever. So there's 4 things that happen for behavioral aspects. And so when you're building and you have this clarity on how you've been operating from a default identity, you can build out your ideal identity of what is required to step into this new season of your life, this higher level, operating at higher levels, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, so you can execute and perform and have the capacity, the threshold, and the endurance to keep up with the assignments that have been imposed upon your life, because they're placed inside of you on purpose. They really, really are. If you have the desire, and if you don't have the desire, um, identifying what is not working for you will bring you more clarity. In chapter 1 in the book, I teach you how to, in a T chart, how to get more clear on what you want in order to identify your purpose in life. And sometimes a purpose, for the most part, comes based on you just taking action and taking the necessary steps based on what is of interest to you right now. And then the things start to unfold. It's literally take a step, take a step, take a step. When you take a step, what has been shown is that you're responsible for moving, and therefore more responsibility comes. In Spider-Man, but I know it actually came from scripture at some point, was they said, with great responsibility, with great power comes great responsibility, but with great responsibility comes great power. And if you don't know how to handle and sustain the level that you're at and max out your resources of where you're at, a lot of people, what I see happen with heightened levels of success, end up being self destructive. And so you can keep it, but can you sustain it and can you multiply it? Which is really like the goal, and be expansive, right? That's what I'm talking about, that nervous system of that expansiveness, the multiplication, the scaling, the operating at higher levels. Because who really wants to build something only to destroy it? Not me. I've seen it happen way too many times, and I used to be that person. So I'm not throwing shade. I just want to make sure that you are preventing, number one, folding on yourself, quitting on yourself, settling in your life, settling in your business because you don't have the tools or the life skills in order to make sure you're operating at higher levels as a human being. We have to remember you're a human being before you're a human doer. And even with AI, AI is waiting for you to give it instructions. If you don't know how to think for yourself, you don't know what questions to ask it, and you're not like a step ahead, it's there to be a resource for you, a space as a helper. But at the same time, AI can never replace the Holy Spirit. AI can never give you above and beyond of what's going to be the most aligned step for you of what God is calling upon your life. That's you having your own intimate relationship with the Lord, right? Through Jesus Christ. So, getting back into the phases, is you have the identity work, which is showing up every single day. To give you the example, I had a client that operated from a default personality, aka a self-sabotaging part, when they were dysregulated. So we identified triggered emotions, which was anxiety and exhaustion. And somebody in the chat had wrote about burnout, which practically are the hybrid of those emotions. Those triggered emotions led to the amygdala in the brain going danger, 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 which led to the behavior of eating, smoking, just drinking, temporary escapes to find relief, emotional relief, because the body, the nervous system said, hey, it's not safe for you right now, and we need to self-soothe. And so a lot of high achieving entrepreneurs I see being in this space of functional addiction. And one of the things is like, it's just a tool. The substances that people turn to in moments of distress, dysregulation, is where you want to just swap out the tool, identify the behavioral pattern, be able to know. Typically, what I've noticed in patterns of working with people, it's two key emotions compound at a high space that leads to grabbing tools to self-soothe, to find relief in that moment, to help get them through XYZ. And the body really doesn't know the difference of the intensity of danger. It could just be emotionally, I just don't know how to cope. I don't know how to process. I don't know how to regulate and ground myself. And that's all other different things. If you guys want a tactical emotional training, all resources, a la carte self-study courses are in the description below. So you can check that, or in the link in the bio. Now, getting back to what I was saying is, like, as you're taking these steps, this gray zone that happens, what we did is we just, one of the things is, when I was working in outpatient centers, addictions, and overcoming my own addictions, is I've realized you can't take something away from somebody. When you take something away from somebody, especially if it's their only tool to give them relief, you've just intensified the craving and the desire. That's why the relapse rates are so high, because what you're doing is you're taking somebody out of their environment, typically toxic soil, toxic environment. You're putting them in a bubble, and then you're throwing them back into the same environments for the most part. And then the relapses happen. So when you work with this, taking away, but when you come to the space of an adding, I call it like addition. So what we did is we identified default behavior. We reprogrammed it with ideal behavior because, say for example, in chapter 2 in my book, Building the New Year of Living Life on Purpose, I talk about the 12 subcategories of your life. And in that one, he wanted to get really healthy and get in the best shape of his life. But his emotional eating was sabotaging the body goals, right? So what we had done is like, okay, well, every time you want to go to the refrigerator and go snack or go call Uber Eats, you have to do 20 sit-ups or 20 push-ups. And what we do is we create a pattern disruptor. And then you can still go ahead and call Uber Eats and you can call, but sometimes you just need a space. You need a space to breathe, a space to process, a space to to not intertwine the emotion with the behavior. You need to take out the emotion from the behavior and give yourself a time to like have space, right? So and then from there, it just becomes practice. Practice until you become it. Practice until you shift. Practice until you become this next person and allow time to catch up. And that's the cognitive consonance where we're in this space because sometimes there's an identity shift framework that has to happen for reprogramming because they've all been learned behavioral patterns. But if you want more information, make sure you click on the free resources, get yourself the book, and on May 29th, I'm hosting a time management productivity, building out your own schedule. It is going to be a 3-day intensive where we're building out your schedule for a whole year. I'm going to teach you plug and play. So it doesn't matter what season you are in your life, what's going on, whether it being a high or a low, you know how to plug in the right things so that everything that you're doing and how you're showing up is that cognitive consonance, right? The identity work that eventually time is going to catch up. And by the time you know it, you've now shifted into a completely brand new person that has been built on purpose, intentionally, and on your terms. All right, you guys, my name is Tanya Oliver, performance coach for CEOs, executives, high performers, and achievers, just teaching business owners and all you guys how to operate at higher levels mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually so you can build a righteous business, life, and a legacy. I'll see you in the next video. Make sure you check the description below for more. Bye.